Is Jon Jones going to retire after he fights Stipe?
Is this your retirement fight in November, or no? You got more?
It's gonna be the last time.
It's gonna be the last time?
It's gonna be the last
Hey, you're a
time.
legend. Hey, thank you.
More than likely.
It was an honor.
Understandably, after this clip, a lot of people are saying that Jon Jones will be retiring. However, I don't think so. And in this video, we're going to be taking a look at why I don't think Jon Jones will retire, whether or not the Tom Aspinall fight will ever happen, and why I think Jon Jones versus Stipe will be a closer fight than most people think. Firstly, guys, I want to say welcome back to the channel. I appreciate the love that was given to me for the last video, which was 5 things we learned from UFC 306, Sean O'Malley against Murad Dvalishvili. I really enjoyed making that video. I do make UFC breakdowns, predictions, just opinion pieces, so if you're into that kind of thing, make sure you are subscribing. But anyway, you're here for Jon Jones talk. Let's get started. I want to start by talking about whether or not the outrage to this fight is justified or not. Jon Jones versus Stipe. Look, through the years, people would have loved to see this fight. It might be a bit outdated now, but I do want to go into whether or not this outrage is fair or not. Personally, I think the reaction's been a little bit harsh, especially when you look at the matchmaking that's gone on in the light heavyweight division. You can see that Magomed Ankalaev has been overlooked. They gave the title shot to number 7 ranked Khalil Roundtree. He's facing Pereira next month. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, yes, but Tom Aspinall is the interim title holder. He should be given the opportunity to make it undisputed, fight Jon Jones for the title. And I completely understand where you're coming from. I completely agree with that to a certain extent. The problem is, I think the UFC need to clarify where they stand on interim titles. Is it something that automatically gives you the right to unify? I don't think they've come out and said that, and I think they need to, because otherwise, what's the point in these interim titles? If you're not going to get the next shot, it kind of renders them meaningless. Yes, it's nice to have if you've got an inactive champion, but the UFC really need to make it clear to the fans. If Tom Aspinall had never become the interim champion, if he was just the #1 contender, I'm sure there'd be backlash, but not to the extent that we're seeing. Because we've seen it so many times before in the UFC, with a #1 contender overlooked because of a more fan-friendly fight, or timings, or injuries, or anything like that. So really, I understand the anger towards the UFC, towards Jon Jones for ducking Tom Aspinall, but I do think overall it's a bit over the top. This is a good fight we're having. I'm going to come on to why I think it'll be more competitive and why I don't think it's Jon Jones' last fight. But I think that this is a fight that we should still look forward to. And it's not like we haven't seen fighters skipping the queue before. We're going to see it again. It's just something you have to get used to with the UFC. Look, I'd much rather have it this way, where we have more regular fights, better cards, than like boxing, where we see fighters never fighting each other in their prime. At least we see it more often than not in the UFC. So let's move on to the fight itself. Whether you like it or not, this is a legacy fight. Stipe holds the record number of title defences in the heavyweight division. Jon Jones is the greatest of all time, and this is a matchup which will have big impacts on their legacy. If Stipe beats Jon Jones, that cements him as the heavyweight GOAT. If Jon Jones blasts through Stipe, then he is undeniable. He becomes even more undeniable than the guy who tore through the light heavyweight division all those years ago. I've seen a lot of people writing off Stipe's chances based on his last fight against Francis Ngannou. But you need to rewatch that fight. That was the scariest version of Francis Ngannou we'd ever seen. He was just unbeatable that night. I remember when Stipe went for that first takedown, we thought, here we go again. Stipe's going to show his experience wrestling to beat Ngannou. And then when Ngannou sprawled and then just poured it on him until he stopped him in a vicious knockout, we thought, okay, Francis is the guy. He's going to be the next GOAT of the heavyweight division. It was as simple as that. However, for whatever reason, he's parted ways with the UFC since then after beating Cyril Gane, and Stipe's taken time off. I think this time off is going to be great for Stipe. It will allow time for his chin to recover, his body to recover. He is in his 40s, and that is obviously a weakness. But it's much more of a weakness down the weight classes. If this was a lightweight fight, and Stipe was coming back at 40 plus years old, I wouldn't be trying to make the justification that this would be a competitive fight. I wouldn't do that to you. But in this case, we're in the heavyweights. They do mature later. They do hit their primes later. 40 is still old. Any heavyweight over the age of 40, it's not ideal. You're out of your prime. But I do think this will be a more competitive fight. It's certainly not going to be another Cyril Gane. Bookmark this if he does blast through Stipe in 30 seconds. But I do not think this will be another Cyril Gane. And there's a few reasons for this. Firstly, Stipe is a solid boxer. He can crack. He's got good head movement generally. And just remember his rematch with DC. He can adapt in fights as well. So if it's not going his way in this fight, he can look for different shots, different opportunities and make them happen. In the rematch with DC that I just mentioned, his adaptation to those body shots ultimately won him that fight. And you know what? It wouldn't be completely out of this world to see him coming up with a game plan and executing some nice stand-up on the feet to make things difficult for Jon Jones. On top of this, I said it's not going to be the same fight as Cyril Gane, and it's not. Stipe's a good wrestler. He was a Division 1 college wrestler. He's shown good wrestling throughout his fighting career, and Jon Jones won't be able to take him down quite as easily. Jon Jones took down Daniel Cormier, who's one of the best wrestlers the UFC's ever seen, and Daniel Cormier took down Stipe in their fight. So I do think Jon Jones will be able to take Stipe down, but it's not a given. It's not going to be so easy. Stipe's huge and his wrestling is legit. I really believe this is going to be a tougher test. Couple this with the fact that Jon Jones is coming off an injury. We don't know what kind of physical shape he's going to be in going into this fight. Look, it's in November. I'm sure he wouldn't have signed on the dotted line if he wasn't going to be in good shape, in great shape for that fight. But still, I think it's going to be closer than people think. And the final point on this fight, for any accusations that Stipe is chinny, he could well be. But he's not fought for 3 years. That gives his chin a lot of time to recover. He might still be chinny, but the fact that he's had 3 years off, look, it's not great. Inactivity is not good for any fighter. But in this case, let me make the argument. If his chin's better, if he's still been training hard, which I think he will have been because he's been ready for the previous dates, so he's training hard, his chin's recovering, we could see a decent version of Stipe. Not a prime version, I'm not trying to make that argument, but we could see a good version of Stipe against Jon Jones, who might be in questionable condition. I could see this fight going the distance. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this fight goes the distance, and I think it's going to be much closer than people think. Anyway, we have to wait until November to find out how that one goes. But let's talk about the Jon Jones clip that we started the video with. Is Jon Jones going to retire after he fights Stipe? I don't think so, and there's a few reasons for this. Ego obviously plays a massive part into it. Jon Jones, he's such a crazy character to get your head round. On the one hand, he says that he doesn't care about legacy, then everything he seems to do is about legacy. This fight, for example, with Stipe seems to be about legacy. And I think that another legacy fight will get him out of bed, will get him training. Obviously, the money has to be right. That'll be a huge factor. After beating Stipe Miocic, I cannot see Jon Jones calling out Tom Aspinall, putting it out there. It's not going to happen. I feel like he's going to be fairly non-committal about what the future holds, but there is one fight that will get him out of bed, will get him back in training. It's not Tom Aspinall. It is Alex Pereira. Pereira is the biggest name in the sport right now. He's been the middleweight champion, the light heavyweight champion, and I truly believe he's going to go for heavyweight too. Now, there's so many reasons why Jon Jones takes this fight. Alex Pereira is not a heavyweight. He's been the middleweight champion. Jon Jones could never have made middleweight. So Jon Jones is naturally the bigger guy. This is a much more winnable fight for Jon Jones than the Tom Aspinall fight is. I just don't think at this point Jon Jones risks his legacy for a very, very difficult fight in Tom Aspinall. Alex Pereira has the equaliser, his left hook, we all know this, but Jon Jones knows that wrestling is the key to victory in this fight. So my prediction is, and bookmark this as well, Jon Jones will beat Stipe. It's not going to be pretty. I think it probably will go to a decision, and then Jon Jones will take some time off and come back in 2025. A huge super fight. Jon Jones against Alex Pereira, probably for the heavyweight title, and then Jon Jones wins that via wrestling and sails off into the sunset. Look, it might not be the most satisfying end to the career. A lot of Tom Aspinall fans, a lot of UFC fans, including myself, would love to see that fight. That would be a true statement of who's the greatest heavyweight at the moment. But I think we need to get that idea out of our heads. I don't think that's happening. Let me know if you agree with me. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's been a bit of a ranty one, but there's going to be plenty more of these to come. So if you have enjoyed it, do subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon.